Good morning, everybody. I'm Carlette Christmas, and this is On Point Talk. This morning, we're talking about procrastination. Stay on point for that conversation after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, we're talking about a subject that probably will touch each and every one of us, and it is procrastination. Our guest this morning is Deacon Joseph Ferrari. He is a PhD. He's a psychology major, and he has done extensive work and written extensively about procrastination. Dr. Ferrari, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. I'm delighted to be here.
Indeed. So I can't do your bio and your work justice. So tell us a little bit about your journey into psychology.
Into psychology or into that's too long. I'll give you the journey into understanding procrastination, where it came from. So it was, I'm a boomer, and so I was going to grad school in the late 80s. I had taught at a community college, returned from my PhD. And I'm sitting in a graduate class on self-defeating behavior. The instructor, the professor, was a social psychologist, but retooling herself to become a clinical psychologist. And she was studying and researching and dealing with clients who did masochism and sadomasochism, and there's a concept called choosing to suffer. And so she's covering the concept of self-handicapping, when we purposely sabotage ourselves, when we're not sure we're going to succeed, so we put obstacles in our way so that we would fail, and we can blame the obstacle, not me. And I raised my hand in that class and I said, excuse me, is procrastination? I don't know where it came from, but that example. And she goes, oh, yes. I raised my hand again. And I said, okay, could you talk about that? I don't know the literature, but I'm sure someone did a study. Again, this is 1988. Actually, no, 85 to 88 when I was in doctoral program. And so I write it down in the back of my notebook. This is the old days before the internet. And I go to the library and I look it up and I find nothing on this topic. I find a few things on writer's block, but that's not what procrastination really is. A few things on career indecision. Certainly, indecision is a form of procrastination. We call it decisional procrastination. But as a social psychologist, I wanted to understand the causes, the consequences for this tendency. And so in grad school, and your listeners, those who are in grad school may resonate with this concept, you kind of taught two different paths. You can either do research that everybody else does, so there's a body of literature on that, or you can move into something that nobody has done, and so you're kind of the pioneer, and your name gets associated with that. Well, I'm kind of like that idea, but it also made it difficult because I would publish articles or try to publish articles, and journals would reject it. This is not a topic that people study, and I would have to say, yeah, I know, I'm starting that topic. Or I would have to cite my own work because there were no other articles, and I remember journal reviewers coming back saying, great, but you cite Ferrari too much, and they have to come back, well, that's because I'm the only one doing these studies at this time. Now there's much more interest. There is and I have a future blog on this. People will say, we procrastinate more today than in the past. That is so false. We're not doing it more. All right. We are doing it differently. And maybe now we discuss it more, but I would never say that we procrastinate more now than in the past.
So do you think sitting in that classroom, that procrastination was sort of a spiritual journey for you, that you would dive into something that hadn't necessarily been written about and dissected the way that your work has been done?
Yeah, interesting idea. Was it a calling for me to do that at this point? I think is kind of what I'm hearing you asking me. Wow. Sometimes, maybe more often than we think, we're called by a higher power. I like to call it God. Some people will call it Youre. If you're a Jedi, you call it the Force, or whatever it might be. We are called in a direction, and we don't know that we're called. So my answer would be perhaps, maybe. I've never thought of it that way, but perhaps there was a reason he was calling me that way. But the point I've always tried to do is try to figure out, how can I help people? How can I make a difference? And that's what I think procrastinators sometimes misunderstand. It's all about me when people procrastinate. I don't like it. I find it hard. It's unpleasant to me. But life ain't about me. Life is about we. Life is about you and I and everyone else. And so if I don't do something that someone else needs, it's only delaying that next person's ability to do the task and the next person. So life isn't about me. I'm going to fail. Well, yeah, life is about failure. In fact, there's been some recent social psychology research that showed healthy individuals, and I mean psychologically healthy, best adjusted, are individuals who succeed 85% of the time, but fail 15% of the time. Because it's out of the failure that we grow. Mm-hmm. I remember hearing a minister once say something like that. If we only had the sunshine all the time, we would be in a desert. We need the rain. The rain helps things grow. Mm-hmm. We need that. Now, we don't want to have the rain all the time. That's 15%. Sure. But we need that. So what I've been trying to get people to understand, and I cover it a little bit in my book, but I also give talks on spiritual procrastination, trying to get people to move beyond thinking about, I can't do it and I don't want to do it because it's unpleasant to me or I might fail, to understand that life is full of failure. God, when she made us, made it so that we will bend down, but we'll also get up. All right. Those knees are made to get you back up. The question isn't whether you're going to fail in life. You will. It's like what they say with car insurance. The question isn't whether you're going to get in an accident. The question is you will. The question is when.
Right.
Right. When with the accident? Well, when will I fail? Yes, you will fail in life. It's how you get up. Mm-hmm. And how do you grow from that getting up? And how do you become different? Now, can I keep going? Or
absolutely, you can. But here's what I want you to. I
was going to talk about wounds. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So before we talk about wounds, I want you to break down procrastination, because it's interesting what you wrote. You said everybody procrastinates, but everybody is not a procrastinator. And I'm paraphrasing. But so let's talk about what procrastination is and what it isn't.
Yeah, that's my tagline that I've seen others kind of stealing, is that everybody procrastinates, but not everybody is a procrastinator. And let me give you a concrete example of that. If you ask college students, the research shows that 70 to 75% say they procrastinate. When I have done my studies of adults, because I don't usually use college students, I prefer to use community samples, all right, and I've done this globally, I find 20% of men and women, there's no gender difference, all right, normal meaning no psychiatric problem, 20% of adults report that this is their lifestyle, that this is something they do at home, at school, at work, in relationships. 20% of people. So it sounds like 70, the 20, as we get older, we do it less? No, we're talking about two different things there. The college student might delay studying and reading and writing the paper and doing whatever and signing up for classes. But if there's a free keg of beer in the dorm, they're there. Uh-huh. If, I don't know, if Lady Gaga's given a free concert for the first 50 people, they're there. Well, then you're procrastinating on academic tasks, but you're not a procrastinator. As a social psychologist, I'm much more interested in that person who makes it their lifestyle. All right. So it's not the same as delaying.
Okay.
It's not the same as waiting. It's not the same as postponing. Mm-hmm. All right. Not the same as pondering. In the Bible, scripture, Mary is approached by the angel and told that she's going to give the birth of Jesus. And it says Mary pondered. It doesn't say Mary procrastinated.
Right.
Mary stopped and paused and thought about it and said, okay, I go forward. Aha, that's the difference. Delaying, waiting, postponing are adaptive. But there is a tipping point. There's a point where you waited too long and now it moves into procrastination.
Okay, hold that thought. When we come back, we'll talk about the tipping point. We'll talk about those people who just can't, for whatever reason, move forward because of this thing called procrastination. Dr. Joseph Ferrari is our guest this morning, and we're talking about understanding procrastination. Stay on point. We're back after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. Our guest this morning is Dr. Joseph Ferrari, and we're talking about the extensive work and study that he is doing on a story and a topic that is many of our lives, procrastination. What is it and why are we doing it? It's so funny because when we went to break, he said, the real procrastinators are not going to get to this conversation until the last few minutes. So why are some of us made up, or are we made up to be procrastinators? What is it in our psyche that causes it?
So while everybody might procrastinate a task, something, people who know me would never call me a procrastinator, but I don't like cutting the grass. All right, this is a task that I hate to do because I have to do it again, and I have to water this thing and fertilize this thing. So I procrastinate as much as I can cutting the grass, but I am not a procrastinator. If you know me and you see my resume
Sure.
and the things that I do. But there are some people, 20% of adults in the United States, this is their lifestyle. They'll never RSVP on time. They'll always wait till the gauge goes on empty before they get more gas. They get that third bill before they pay it. They're going to miss sporting events and concerts because they never got the ticket. They don't go to doctor's appointments on time. This is their lifestyle, and they're great excuse makers. Why do we do this? I think because our culture says, oh, that's okay. And yet, that 20% is higher than depression, phobia, panic attacks, substance abuse, alcoholism. And those are serious problems, but they're at a much lower rate than this procrastination. And the interesting thing is, because I've traveled around the world giving talks about procrastination, this is not just a US phenomenon. We find this rate in Canada, in England, in Australia, in Spain, Peru, Venezuela, Italy, Poland, Turkey, Israel, Ireland. I can't think of Saudi Arabia.
So around the world, this is universal.
Well, the countries that I've done, Japan. We haven't done Africa. No one's invited me to go down to Africa to do the research down there with them. But we find it pretty globally. Is this genetic then? Is this human nature? I struggle with that concept. No, I think we've learned to procrastinate. We tend to learn it from our home.
Okay, and I was going to ask you, how do we learn it?
Yeah, I'm getting there. We learn it initially from developmentally. There's no gene for procrastination. You're not born genetically with this little gene. No, you learn it. And where do you learn most things? From the home in the beginning. And this was interesting, and this has been in several studies, and I've actually placed this on the blog as well, the development of procrastination. It's dads who cause kids to
dads?
Dad, not mom. Mom is off the hook this time. We like to always blame mom, for this. No, it's fathers. What kind of father? The cold, demanding father who says, you do what I say. I don't want to hear any lip. I said you do that, and you do it now. Well, the kid can't rebel. Mm-hmm. So the only thing the kid can do is sit back and say, all right, okay, I'll do it, and which makes the father probably even more angry. Mm-hmm. What if there's only mom in the home, or one parent? We have found it's the style, that parenting style. Now, dads often have that style. But if there's both parents, it's often dad that's cold, demanding, stern, father. Procrastinators report more conflict with that dad, a shallower relationship, not very close with that dad. So developmentally, we learn this. Now, I've showed those studies back in the 90s. In 2017, I held the 10th biennial meeting, international meeting on the study of procrastination. So for those who are listening and watching today and saying, oh, this is a frivolous topic, there's a serious body of research growing, emerging, and scholars. And when we've had our first meeting, 10th biennial, that means for 20 years. All right, at the first one, there was maybe a dozen of us. When I hosted the one in Chicago at DePaul University at Chicago, where I'm at, I had 65 international scholars there. And I'm telling you that because one of the presenters actually looked genetically, looking at identical twins, following up my study that was all self-reports, and found that genes did not explain the tendency to be procrastination. It was environmental, hence learning. So we learn to be procrastinators, and we learn it often from the home. Why? Because procrastinators would rather you view them as lacking effort than lacking ability.
So now
mean,
it looks like instead of you not having the ability, that you're lazy.
Okay, not lazy. I didn't apply the effort. Because procrastinators are not lazy. And I'm glad you raised that word. Because they're not lazy. They're working
But they
very
don't they
hard.
present it on the, to the naked eye, to someone not understanding it presents, or they present as,
You're
and
lazy.
teachers will say it, you're just lazy, or parents
That's
will
right.
say it,
Okay.
you're just lazy.
Yeah, and my Christian background, I don't want to label people like that. I'd rather say, what's going on and what can we do to change that? Because if it's learned, it can be unlearned. And once
Okay.
you stigmatize, once you label somebody
That's
like that,
good.
it carries a ton of baggage, and it just it enables them. And now you're saying there's something about you, as
Right.
opposed, you're lazy. And
Right.
actually, they're not lazy. They work very hard at doing other things than what they're supposed to. That's what people don't understand. And that's why I hope your viewers will gather this today. You're absolutely right. People say they're lazy, they're incompetent. No. They know what they do. In fact, many procrastinators would say, I'm not a procrastinator, I'm a perfectionist. Oh, if the job isn't perfect, I don't want to hand it in. And unless it's perfect, I'm not a
Now,
procrastinator.
isn't somewhere around there fear, cloaked into that?
Yeah. I know you're recording and I know you're editing. I feel like I'm going in a lot of different directions and I don't quite finish anything. There was an earlier comment you said I tried to answer and I lost it now. But okay. Oh,
You lost it. You got so many things go, and there's so much to talk about. Okay, try to get.
there is. And let me
Go
just
ahead.
clear up the lack of, and then I'll move into the fear.
Okay.
Don't worry, I can do that. I hope seamlessly. Okay, so they would rather have you think they lack effort than ability.
Okay.
Well, neither one of those is positive, you might say. That's right. But lacking effort means I might have the ability, I haven't tried. And as you say, it might mean laziness. Okay? Right. But it's not. If I finish something and it's not quite good enough, then you're going to say, I don't have the ability. And no matter how much I try, it doesn't matter. I just can't cut it. So I'd rather have you think I lacked effort. Neither one of those is positive. I realize that. But the procrastinator, the chronic procrastinator, that 20%, all right, is very social esteem conscious. They're very concerned about what other people think of them. You see, so you know what self-esteem is. In psychology, we talk a lot about self-esteem. It's how I feel about myself. Well, in social psychology, we talk about social esteem. It's how others feel about me. And I would rather, if I'm going to give you a negative image of me, I'd rather you think I didn't try than I just can't cut it, than I just can't do it. Because it comes from fears. Fears. Now, there's fear of failure. See, if I finish and it's not good, I may never succeed. But even fear of success can cause people to procrastinate. And that, sometimes people, listeners, viewers say, well, that's odd. Why would somebody ever procrastinate if they're going to do well? Because I don't think I can maintain that well. See, I do well, and I don't know that I can do it the next time. So you give me another task, which raises it even higher. So I don't want to hand it in on time or finish that. Or I'm the lawyer who doesn't finish the briefs all on time. So you don't give me a bigger case. Or in the job, in the workplace, they don't ask more from me, even though I did really well with that other client. So I hold back.
So
I
is that
delay.
the fear of having to do it again? And will I be able to do it again?
Do it well, like I did that last time.
Wow.
Exactly. So that we call that fear of success. Fear of success and fear of failure are two of those. But it also comes from this lack of this social conscious expression, this way of expressing themselves to other people. Because we like procrastinating. They're very nice people. One thing I've shown is that interpersonally they're very nice. They're people oriented. They're just not task oriented. You just can't depend on them getting anything done. But interpersonally, they're very friendly, nice. And so we listen to their excuses. Okay, that sounds good. It's just that every time there's always an excuse why they don't get something done. That's the problem. Back to the student for a minute, because I didn't finish that one. So we have this 70% of college students, 20% of adults. Do you do it less as you get older? They're different concepts. And so I really cringe when I read the media or scholarly articles, and they talk about students are procrastinators, then I expect to see that as their lifestyle. If you only procrastinate in school, then don't call yourself a procrastinator.
Hold that
You're an
thought. Stay right
you're an
there.
academic.
We're going to take a break here, but when we come back, we'll talk about how to reverse all of these challenges. Stay on point. We're back after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This morning, Dr. Joseph Ferrari is our guest this morning, and we're talking about procrastination and really trying to break down so those people that may, Dr. Ferrari, have been debilitated by why they have these issues. And I think in the last segment, there was so much power about the fear of success and the fear of failure. But when we left off, you were talking about students, college students, and not to really hinge everything on the fact that maybe they're procrastinating with their work that will determine whether they are going to be future procrastinators.
There was a question there. I think I missed it. There was a
Well,
question.
this is
Just
where we
talk about that.
This
Okay.
is where we left off after the
Sure,
break,
sure.
and so I want you to finish that thought.
Okay. So I want your viewers who may be students and watching this instead of doing the assignment they're supposed to be doing to realize that you're procrastinating in this one domain. You have to ask yourself, do I do this only when it comes to school? But if my boss calls me and says, I need you today, ASAP, come on in extra hours, do you go? Or do your friends call you and say, we're going to go partay later today, and do you go? All right, then if you're doing those things, you're not a procrastinator. You're procrastinating on this one task. And you got to ask yourself, what is it about this task? Now, part of the problem is, and I haven't done, my area of interest is not really academic procrastination, but chronic procrastination. But I did do an interesting study that I want to talk a little bit about because it really has some interesting implications. We asked students at 3 different universities, 3 different schools, a very selective school, a typical school, and a very open-ended kind of school that you can go to. Their tendency to procrastinate. And I found that the rates of procrastination were highest reported by students at that very selective school. I expected it to be higher among the open kind of school to go to. But it was that. Why? Well, because for the students at the very selective school, if I don't start on a task right away in their mindset, then I'm procrastinating. Where the other ones, oh, I got time. So the concept of what is procrastination, this tells me, varies on how we perceive it and how we may view the different task. But beyond that, we looked at the excuses, the fraudulent excuses that students generate for why they may be procrastinating with professors. Now, what's another word for fraudulent excuse?
I don't know.
To lie. Right?
Okay.
If you think about a fraudulent excuse is the politically correct way of saying you're lying.
Okay, good.
And so what students said, right, when we asked them, how often do you use fraudulent excuses
Right.
or when you're delaying, they reported that over 70% of the time, when I give a reason to a professor for not doing something, it's a fraudulent excuse.
Right.
Do you hear what I'm saying?
I
That means
do.
most of the time when someone says, oh, I can't do this, they're lying to you.
Wow.
They're not telling you the truth. Now, that's pretty interesting. And that's what they admit, which means to me, it's probably even higher than 70%. And then we ask, what kind of instructor do you lie to? Well, and I'll just give you the bottom line. I'm more likely to lie, says students, if it's a woman, if she's young, and if she's lenient. In other words, call me my first name. They will walk all over you. And these are college freshmen, sophomores, so I bet you it happens in the high school level too.
Sure.
All right, so the more you say, oh, get to know me and be personal, and I'm not saying be cold and impersonal, but I am saying realize that most of the time they lie. Because then we ask them, how often have you been asked to give proof for why the printer died last night, why grandma died again, why you lost another limb, you know, they say no. Over 90% of the time, the instructors say, that's okay, get it to me next time. So they're never asked to give any proof. So of course they're going to lie. All right, so they can get away with it.
But do
That's
we know?
very fascinating.
Do we know why they're lying? Are they lying because they're fearful that it won't
Yeah,
be.
because I'm fearful. Yes, because I want more time, because I didn't get to do it, because, you're not going to hold me accountable. This is the problem with our culture today is we don't give the early bird the worm. Remember that expression? I grew up with that
Yes.
expression. And it's interesting. A lot of not millennials will know it, but the Gen Zs don't seem to know that expression. There's an old expression. The early bird gets the worm.
Right.
It's the one who gets up early that gets there. And we don't do that today. Today we take that worm and we cut it so everybody gets a piece and make sure they all get the same piece. And
Right.
I don't want to be, I got to be fair to everybody. Well, no, let's reward for doing early. And let's not punish for being late.
So with all of that said, and we have all of the information on what the studies say and how we get to this place of procrastination, whether it's the fear of failure or fear of success, how then do you reprogram the mind to change that behavior?
Yeah, the thing is to realize, number one, time management programs will not work for that 20%. In fact, there's been a major meta-analysis study that showed it doesn't work for them. To put them in a time management program, they will walk out, and I talk about that in my book, all right, however, the great excuse makers, they'll come out and say, well, that was interesting, but for me, it
Right.
can't work, blah, 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 blah. And you go, oh, okay. However, in my case, blah, 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 it won't work. So time management does not work because, first of all, we don't manage time. We manage ourselves. There's 168 hours a week, no more, no less. And that goes back to Pope Gregory in the 1500s, who made the calendar, who took it from Julius Caesar at 36 BC, who took it from the Egyptians. All right. So we've been stuck with this, not stuck, but I mean, that's what you got. No more, no less. So you can't manage time. You manage yourself. You can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. You can adjust how you deal with the situations.
Right.
You can't control the wind. And the Japanese like saying, if there's no wind, row. So just move and do it. I like that addition. So what can I do?
Right.
Well, first of all, don't go to time management programs. If you're the 20%, it's not going to work for you. Unfortunately, and people may not like to hear this, if you're part of that 20%, you need a professional help. You need a good therapist.
Really? You need a therapist?
Oh, yes. A cognitive behavior therapist, or we say CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, because you need somebody who's going to have to help you change those thoughts you have and change your actions. If you're part of the 20%, you need professional help. And that's not stigmatizing.
No.
And that's not saying a bad thing.
No.
My God, if I had cancer, I went to a doctor.
Right.
All right?
I just never thought about, that with an issue like this, but this is really the prescription for getting over it and changing this behavior.
Because life's too short. Because a very famous book that a lot of people have read, the Bible, says, you live to 70, 80 if you're strong.
Right.
Life's too short. My God, make a difference. Leave a legacy in life. Don't worry about the failures. Make the world better. You got 80 years. That's nothing to eternity. All right? So how can you make that? I like to tell my students, you're like a grain of sand on the beach in a desert.
Mm-hmm.
Look around on that desert. There are lots of grains of sand. It might seem minuscule and unimportant, that one grain, but because you're part of that beach, that desert, you contribute to it. So make your desert, your piece of that contribution, so much more important than just not, doing something. Life isn't about me, it's about we. And we have to understand, if you're a procrastinator, that, there are things we have to do. You might fail, you might succeed. We don't know. All right. And that's okay. That's part of life. Not everybody always wins. All right, just because you're a woman of faith, I will give you this, and you can cut this out. But, people always wonder, did Jesus always succeed? Absolutely not. I love that our scriptures include the story of the rich young man, because it shows we may not always win. Right? What did that guy at the end says, I can't do that.
Right.
No, too much. Goodbye, I'm walking away. And so I always wondered, does he come back later? We don't know. Doesn't matter. But what a great faith we have, that willing to admit we may not always be reaching people.
Right.
Buddha and Buddhism and all these other faiths don't talk about that. All right, we're willing to admit. So anyway, so the point is, back on task, The point is you're going to fail in life. And that's not, and as we said earlier, the person who fails actually not all the time, but the person who fails 15% of the time is actually more successful.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. And I think we're creating a culture where you have the helicopter parents, and we've created a situation where we don't want to allow our children to fail. And I think it's because, and all of it goes back to our own genealogy. You know, if our kids fail, then we feel like we failed, so we stop the failure process. And so we can sell this thing that failure is good, and we learn from failure, but nobody really wants to fail. And hence the fear.
Right. You're absolutely right. Nobody wants to fail. And keep in mind that I'm not saying fail and hurt yourself.
Sure.
I'm saying, let me give you an expression my Italian grandmother used to say. It loses in the translation, but and then I can explain it to you. She used to tell us, for some people, they won't get off the beach till the water hits their behind. What does that mean? That means you can warn them all the way. The tide's coming.
Right.
If you're going to get wet, you really should move. Some people won't move till they get wet. Now, wet, not drown, right? Not hurting themselves.
Right.
All right. For some people, we need to let a little failure happen. Again, not harming themselves, so that they learn from that. Remember that analogy earlier. If we only had the sunshine all the time, we'd have deserts. We need some rain. You need some failure. And again, remember also that percentage, 15%. It's not a lot. We're talking about some failure. So as a parent, no, I don't want my child to get hurt. But I got to let them ride the bicycle and maybe scrape the knee a little bit, or understand that something happened. Maybe I can't bail them out on that assignment that's due tomorrow because they waited, because they played and they had fun. Maybe they need to realize, because failing one task out of all the things you got to do in grammar school ain't gonna make you a loser. All right, you're gonna succeed in life. But sometimes you learn from that. And so, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I agree. But that's the problem in our culture. We don't want people. The other problem, as I said earlier, is we tend not to reward people for doing things early.
Right.
I pay my bills every month on way before time. I don't get anything at the end of the year. Thank you very much. But if I'm late with my bills, I get a fine. Income tax. I always say this. I don't know when this show is going to air, but for those who if it's around the time, if you're watching this around the time of April 15th, think about that. If people owe money on April 15th, it's silly to pay ahead of time. The government's got it wrong. It'll fine you if you're late after April 15th. But why doesn't the government say, file your taxes February 15th and you can save 5%?
Right.
The government gets it earlier, you save money. March 15th, save 3%.
But doesn't it all go back, though, Dr. Ferrari? Doesn't it all go back to fear? Like, I was having this conversation with my sister, and we were unknowingly, we were really talking about procrastination. And she was talking about all of these things that she put off. And then when she started going and checking, the list and actually doing the tasks, she was like, I've been in bondage from these things that I don't know what I was thinking, but it turned out fine. Yeah. And I just kept putting off.
Fear of the unknown, fear of those consequences. And as I keep saying, is I know people are going to fail, and that's okay. We're made to bend our knees and to go down. We have to get ourselves up, like the phoenix, rise out of the ashes. Right? You have to come back. Look, again, as a woman of faith, Jesus is crucified. He comes back. He's still got his wounds. Just doesn't talk about them anymore. Not till Thomas comes and says, "Oh, what are those things there?" Yeah, sure. We all have wounds in life. We all have pains and things. And sometimes in life, we touch people's wounds. Not intentionally, we just bump up against them. And then they get depressed, and rightfully so. And we're not sure we did that. And so we're so afraid of touching people's wounds. Well, we touch people's wounds, and it's the way we heal. And sometimes those wounds never go away, and that's life. And that's what happens. And I say this in ministry, in terms of life. You didn't cause the pain of this person. You touched their wound. I mean, sometimes they do cause pain, but sometimes we just touch people's wounds, and that's hurtful. And I understand that. All right. but that's also some of the issues that person needs to learn to adjust from. I'm not blaming the victim. I'm simply saying, it's a mutual way of going things. Cause no harm, but sometimes you have life and it causes that. So we're going to fail. People are going to remember failures that they've had in past in their life. And sometimes we touch their wounds inadvertently by accident. And we just need to know that, that's life. That's part of being humans. I remember many years ago, somebody said, we're an interesting animal, human beings. We're the only ones who have this thing called therapy. You don't see, dogs don't go to therapy to each other. Chimps don't have therapy. There's no therapy for fish when they hurt each other. We're an interesting creature. We claim to be the highest, and we are in terms of evolution, but we're the only ones that go through this process of having to deal with these kinds of things. So don't dismiss your pain. Your pain is real. I understand that. But also you have to realize that life is short and we are all in community, common unity. And so when we don't do things...
Common unity. I like that. And, I think you're right on point, especially with therapy. And I think we all do ourselves a disservice if we aren't looking deeper into ourselves with a therapist to overcome these things that have really obviously held most of us back, and we've never known it. And I think this morning, though we talked about a lot of issues, I think it gives us all a premise of why we do the things that we do and what are our fears. We thought that our fears were maybe I wouldn't be successful, but now we can really, from what you've articulated, really see that maybe the fear of success is also looming so big that I'm paralyzed. Now I don't do anything.
Yeah, and that's sad because you've got 70, 80 years if you're strong. And I really would like people to realize, do. Don't worry, do, serve. Go to the vineyard and serve. That's what we're called to do. We're called to serve each other. As I said a moment, common unity. We're in community. I'm a social community psychologist for the last 30 years. I study what are the strengths of communities and how do we enhance them? How do we make it better? Most people think of psychology as looking at all the abnormal. Well, there's a field called community psych. It's another time, I guess, where we look at the strengths. How do I work as an advocate? How do I empower people? That's for another time. So I think, we need to look at how do we enhance the lives of other people. That's really what it's all about, man.
Look, that's what we wake up to do, Dr. Ferrari, every single morning is we work to enhance the lives of other people. And I look forward to having many, many more conversations with you because there's so much to unpack and to talk about so that we can all get better. We want to thank you, Dr. Ferrari, first of all, for taking the time and for your passion. Your passion is palpable. We can feel it. Before we've got to go, you've got several books and a lot of resources that people can connect with. Tell us about those.
Sure. Real quick. My popular consumer book that people may want to check out, it's been around for a while, is called Still Procrastinating. And I wrote that particularly for the 20% and those who have to live with them, because there's so many of these time management books out there and they're not going to work. And that's why you're still procrastinating. The No Regrets Guide to Getting It Done.
Good.
You can buy it on Amazon, John Wiley and Sons. If you're an academic and you're interested or you're thinking of a research area and you find this interesting, you really want to get, it's expensive, it's old, my 1995 book called Procrastination and Task Avoidance, Theory, Research, and Treatment. And I just should say, William McCowan is at, I believe it's at Louisiana State University now. He wasn't
LSU.
Initially. Yep, I believe that's where he is. And Bill, if I got it, I know it's Louisiana. If I'm wrong, sorry, but good man. So this is the classic book. 95, it's expensive. This is still the book. If you're working in academic settings and you're wondering, this is all great, but I've got students and I need to help counsel. You want my 2000, and there's a series of us, 2004 book from the APA, American Psychological, Counseling the Procrastinating Academic Settings by Henry Schoenberg et al. And then this is really an obscure, little harder one that I did with a good friend of mine, Tim Pitchell, which was New Directions, but this is already 2000. This is old. And this counseling was 2004. So a series of books, a lot of articles. I'd love if you're listening and you're saying, I want to know more. And Ferrari, would you come and talk to my organization? Absolutely. Let's talk. I'll sign all the copies of books you buy, as I tell people. And it has been a pleasure. I know I've talked fast and maybe all over the place, but I am passionate about this topic because I don't want people to procrastinate. I want them to enjoy life and make a difference.
I love that. And you know what I love? I love that you were one of those social scientists that have been able to put the Spirit of God and psychology together.
Absolutely. Why do we have to see science and spirituality as opposite?
Right.
There's actually a field of psychology called the psychology of religion, where there's a whole bunch of us, well, not a big group, but a bunch of people who say that there's a lot we can study together.
Well, next time you're going to relax and you don't have to talk as fast because you see, I'm going to give you like all the time that you need. But I want to share this story with you before I've got to let you go.
Please.
Our son now is 21 years old, and we just adopted 2 toddlers. As God would have it, at our ages, He would have us serve 2 little boys.
That's beautiful.
They were
don't have energy for that.
They were 1 and 2. No, you have to have grace for that, because you can't supply the energy at 53 and 55 that you need for babies.
Yeah.
So now I'm the proud mother of 3.
Beautiful.
But so as you know, when your kids start.
Thank you for letting your heart open up for these 2 children. You know, there's an expression: the child was not born under my heart, but was born in my heart.
Right.
And thank you for that.
Okay. Well, thank you for saying that. And I just think that on this journey, you don't really know what God is going to call you to do. And we all want to think we would say yes to God, but is it convenient? Is it going to fit in my plan? No. Okay, so God's got a bigger plan. So nevertheless, and I just say that to give you context about where we are. So as our son is growing up and coming out of some of the things that teenagers do and really turning into a young adult. Yep. So he's brilliant. He's just a smart young man. Good. And so, but he didn't put forth the effort in high school like he needed to. So now I learned from this conversation not to say, because we say it about boys all the time. We say, little boys are just lazy. They just won't do the work. That's what we say. That's what we lay people say. Now, it's not right, and we learned that today. And so we just said, he's just lazy. He just won't do it. And so as I'm having the conversations with him now as a young man, he says to me, Mother, the reason why I didn't try or I didn't excel was because of if I didn't do anything, then nobody would ever know. They wouldn't know if I was good or bad. So I just didn't do anything. And I think a lot of parents are dealing with that, and we look at it as he's just lazy, or she's just lazy, or he's just stubborn, or whatever. And we don't have the tools to help them.
Well, I'm not a clinical psychologist, and I've just tried to cover, but you covered some really cool things. Fear. Your son was saying, if I do something, I might fail, but I might succeed. But if I don't do it, I can just blend in and out. No, that's right. The Japanese, we have an expression in the U.S., right? The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Gets the oil.
The Japanese expression. It's the nail that sticks up that gets hammered down. Wow. So you never stand out. And right. Your son is reflecting that. Don't stand out. Be part of the group.
Right.
Never be different.
Don't see me. Don't see me.
Right. Because then you might ask me to do something, and maybe I can't do it, or maybe I look stupid, maybe I look foolish. Absolutely, that's the social concern that people have. But your son at 21 as you said, he's beginning to change and grow. He's beginning to find his passion. He's beginning to find his calling. He's beginning to find out that meaning in life. You and I know, I'm 64, you're 50 something. We know that a lot of youth today have no need for religion. But if you talk to them, they have a hunger, a drive.
Oh, yeah.
They're looking for, what is my meaning in life?
That's right.
Why am I here? Oh, I don't want to do that religion stuff. So they've got the same call that all those apostles had. All right, again, I'm going to think of that. All he did was say, follow me.
That's right.
He didn't give them a long list.
Nope.
They drop the nets, they go. They're counting their coins, they go. Follow me.
That's it.
Okay, since I think we're off the air, but I want to show you something in my home office here.
All right.
If I can.
Go ahead.
And then I know you have to go, and hopefully you'll see this. Can you see, this piece of artwork hanging up here?
I do.
Okay, have you ever seen it before? It's a very famous painting. Okay, it's by an artist called Caravaggio.
Okay.
Caravaggio.
Mm-hmm.
He's famous for using lots of light. And I can talk a lot about this, but the point, this is called his famous, The Calling of Matthew. I hope you can see it.
I can see it.
Okay, so go to the third guy in who's pointing to himself.
Okay, I see him.
You see that?
Mm-hmm.
That's Matthew. And so this is a moment in time this artist captures when Jesus is walking by. That's Peter standing in front of Jesus, kind of protecting him, walking by and pointing and saying, take me, follow me.
Mm-hmm.
That captured a moment. So even this tax collector making all this money, and my cord doesn't go any further, but if it did, I'd pull it up and show you. All right, so we've all been called, whether we're a fisherman, whether we're a tax collector, and so we have to find our meaning. And for some people, it's not going to be religion, and we have to accept that.
Right.
All we can do is let them know we are Christian by our love.
Right.
And show them.
By the
and
fruit. By the fruit.
By the fruit. And, interesting thing I do a lot of men's spirituality thing. Men will turn to religion, usually 50s, 60s, as we get older in life. So your son is
No, but he's right there. But he is leaning into his spirituality, leaning into God, hearing the voice of God.
And for young people, it's not worship, it's works. The data shows they find spirituality by doing things, by expressing and helping. Right, that's why volunteerism has grown so high, which I love among this youth more. So he might find his spirituality less in worship and more in terms of by helping, by getting involved in doing something, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's what the youth is. In time, it'll go back to worship. That's what I'm trying to say. As he gets older as a man, you'll begin to realize he's becoming guy. I tell my students, there's boy, guy, man. You start off as boy, and then you're into this phase called guy. And he's guy, and guy is good. And guy, it's all about impressing people and doing the best you can. But then at some point in life, you begin to realize, when later 30s, right. 40s, you begin to realize that's not important in life, and then become man. All right. And once you become man, you can never go back to guy. So enjoy guy, I tell my students, because it's a short period of time. Anyway, we've gone way off the topic.
I know it, but that's okay, because I think that with what I do, I just have to, I'm trying to be spirit led. I don't want it to be what I need it to be, because I need it to be what God needs it to be, because I'm just a vessel, right? Sure. And it's going to be what he wants it to be, and it doesn't have to be perfect. This
is what you're doing. You're helping people by these shows.
That's
people these little shows here's something that you can take away, maybe one or two things.
It might be one word that changes your life.
And that's great. That's wonderful.
And you know what I told my son? We were having a conversation, and I'm going to leave you with this because I think it's important for you dealing with young people at the level that you're on. I think we got it wrong when we told kids to go to college and live their best lives and have fun. This is the best time of your life. And I think what has happened is the enemy has used this to get people further from their purpose. Yeah. Because what happens is your 20s, everybody says this is supposed to be the best time of your life. You're supposed to have fun. You're supposed to just, throw caution to the wind. That's what we're seeing on college campuses. That's why people are sending their kids to school, and some of them are coming back home dead. But it's a lie from the devil. This is the time that if you can link up spiritually to God, then you can start. You don't have to wait. Because see, it's like Percy and the Lightning Bolt. We took our son to see this movie as a kid, and they had eaten these this something. It was like tantamount to a drug. And before you know it, they said, how long have we been here? Well, you go through your 20s and it's a blur. And then you get to 30 and you're trying to figure it out. And then now you got to wait until you're 40 because you're in this blur. So if we could really connect and help our kids to connect spiritually, then I think more people would be living and working and walking in what they were called to do. That's just my
If we
my
as
thought.
a culture can start respecting each other's lives, that, Black Lives Matter. Absolutely is what I'm saying. We need to understand that everybody is, and I don't mean it in that expression. I know I'm a white male, but what I'm trying to tell you is that,
I didn't notice.
life. It's life that's important, and it's just we have just, and you got to understand, today's youth, as your son grew up with 9/11. Right? That was the first generation where they had nothing to hold on to anymore. And they saw economies go down, and they saw wars going down, and they saw political unrest. So this has been a generation, you're right, that doesn't have anything, but they're hungry, like Matthew, for somebody or something, and they're finding it in TikTok, and they're finding it in Twitter or whatever, and so, we have to understand that, life is precious and important, and everybody has a right to live.
Absolutely.
And we forget that. We shouldn't be abusing anybody. And I just hate that. It just pisses me off. And you're right. My generation, I'm a little older than you, missed the boat. We started it. I grew up with the race riots of the 60s and everything else. I remember being a little kid coming home from school crying, Mom, Dad, what's happening? The cities are burning, everything else. But we didn't change it. We raised the awareness, and then it petered out.
Takes courage. It takes courage to change. And
yes, and I'm glad today people are standing up. And I think this time we're going to see some.
But it has to be courage and compassion.
Compassion.
And we will have many more conversations because we just have a lot to talk about.
I know, and I feel like I'm sorry if I said something.
Why are you apologizing?
Because I feel like I'm keeping you, and you're a recorder guy, you're a camera guy. Probably wanted to leave the room.
That's okay.
Or whatever, and I feel like, anyway, I'm embarrassed, and I feel bad.
Well, you shouldn't, because if I wanted to leave, I would have just said, look, I have to go. I think that I have to say, this has been one of the best disclosure interviews that I've had with the media in a very, very long time. Maybe the best I've ever had. I've never had these which is awesome for me. Which is great because nobody wants to hear my story or my side. So I love the fact that we're sharing like this. So, you don't have to call me back, but I will call you back.
If your readers, your listeners want to hear me again, absolutely. All right. So when is this going to show? Because the Pulse media is going to want to know.
Well, I tell you what, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
October? At least in October?
I don't know.
Oh.
You don't want me to give you a fraudulent what?
Fraudulent excuse.
Okay. So I'm not. So I'm telling you, I don't know. But when I know, you will be the first to know.
Good. All right. And then I'm going to need the tape. And when it goes, because DePaul Media records all these things. And I need it for the unit. I'm looking at my calendar.
Absolutely. So, and you let us know what your feedback is on it. And we'll put it together. They'll put it together. And the next time we will talk about some of the other issues.
Sure. All right. Thank you. Live long and prosper. And I appreciate your time.
Right back at you. I appreciate
the cameraman, wherever he went. Thank you for your service.
He's thanking everybody.
Thank you.
They said, you're welcome.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. All right, guys.